Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Monday edition of Moohead Radio. I am your host, Bovine in Orange, vividly colored bovine. I've left a link in the chat room if you want to join me on this program, because this might be the most difficult program I've had to do, because I really want to say something, but what I want to say, not real politically correct. Let's start it all this way. I see that General Dog is in the chat room. General Dog actually had one of his questions answered by Mary Kay Cabbagehead and Dan Labby over at cleveland.com. Basically, when he asked the question, do you guys actually think that RG3 looked poised in Sunday's game? And what he received was an answer from Mary Kay that was basically what you get from Cleveland journalists all the time when they're on the staff payroll, which is, oh yeah, I think that he was let down by his teammates. I think, the real blowjob answer, just jerk the person off and walk away. That's kind of one thing. And I've said this over and over again. I'm not right about everything. Don't want to be right about everything. But having an opinion means something to me. And at least a perception might be a better word than an opinion, because I can't really have an opinion because I'm not in the locker room. I'm not at team practices. I can only give you my impression, my perception of what's going on with the Cleveland Browns. But what I have to say is very troubling. I'll leave it to you to sort it out, and you can decide whether you think this is worth it or not. I watched the game on Sunday, painfully so, like so many others of you did. And at no time did RG3 even look like a professional quarterback to me. In fact, the word poised would be the furthest thing from the truth. What I saw was a selfish athlete who was holding the ball too long, trying to make hero plays, and was scrambling around, running around with an inaccurate strong arm. He actually makes Derek Anderson look accurate. He's uncomfortable in the pocket. And when he runs out of the pocket, his head is down and he doesn't look down the field. So he's looking to run the ball, which will eventually get him injured again. Now, this is not a perception. This is what my eyes saw. The reason that Terrell Pryor was so pissed off was because RG3 didn't throw the ball to him. He threw the ball to Coleman 11 times and only completed 3 of them. And a couple of them were just these big blimpy balls thrown up into a big wind that had no chance of being completed. Hi, Newman. How you doing? I look at RG3 and I say, if you built a system around him like Shanahan did, then I suppose he'd get a passing grade. If all you're worried about is zone read kind of offenses and letting him run that kind of an offense where he's a running back in essence who can also throw the ball and have options, that's fine. But he's not a professional quarterback in the true, let's drop back 3, 5, or 7 steps and stand in the pocket tall and strong and pick out your receivers. He's not that guy. Never has been that guy. Shanahan said, if you're not going to run the system that we ran, you might as well not play this guy. Shanahan was right. He drinks a lot, but he's right. So my feeling there is that, nothing ventured, nothing gained. I mean, you took a shot that maybe RG3 could develop in some meaningful way into a quarterback who could do something in a Hue Jackson offense. And what we're finding is that that's not the case. He does not make good decisions. I mean, throwing a flea flicker out of the end zone in a triple coverage, I'm sorry. A guy who's played as many years as RG3 has can't do that. I mean, that would be the kind of mistake that you would expect Carson Wentz to make as a rookie, or Cody Kessler as a rookie, although Kessler probably couldn't have thrown it that far. But this is what it is. It's something a professional quarterback with experience in the league would never do. Throughout the game, he had short options that he could have checked down to. He refused to do it because he plays hero ball. Too many goddamn Subway 12 inchers, I guess. I don't know what the deal is with RG3. He's got that Queen song. I want it all, and I want it now. That's what he's got. No fucking patience whatsoever. If he was a doctor, he'd have no patience. Thank you. I don't know. I didn't see him throwing the ball to men who were, shorter, more precise patterns. No, timing's not even there. One ball was right, when we had a chance to cut that game down to 20-17, if we score that touchdown, the pass to Seth the Valve, he threw it sidearm and so far over the guy's head and out of bounds. I mean, nobody can throw a football like that. That's just horrible mechanics. Horrible. It's deplorable. There's no chance that pass ever gets completed, ever, throwing it that way. That's RG3. He is not an accurate thrower. Hey, Kevin, you with me? I just see Kevin sitting here in my studio, but he's not talking to me. Well, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, good. How you doing?
General Dog.
Yeah, I figured as much, buddy. How you doing?
Good. I've been coming to your program since I can't even remember when. It's been so many years, probably in your third year since you started the program.
Oh my God.
And I've always used the name General Dog. I've used it on scout.com forums. Not that, I go there much anymore since they banned me for saying something they didn't like.
No, but then you like this show.
Yeah. I mean, I love this show. I mean, you always say exactly what I think. Pretty much 90% of we agree 90% on what you say. So, But yeah, I stated that RG3. I mean, did he look poised? Heck no. He's a one-trick pony, Moo. He's a one-trick pony. That's all he's ever been. I mean, in his rookie year, when the NFL did not have film on him, yeah, that works. It always works. But then teams acquire film on you, and how many times have we seen this? Brandon Whedon, Brady Quinn, just about everybody that's come here that has flashed signs of being good, and then suddenly, they get figured out. Defenses figure them out, and yeah, they disappear.
Well, in the case of RG3, he really had a system that was created for him. It was like the movie The Goodbye Girl that Neil Simon wrote, and he wrote it specifically so that Richard Dreyfuss would play the lead. That was the deal. So, I mean, of course, Richard Dreyfuss was good in the movie because it was written for him, for somebody who acted like him. And this is the whole Washington Redskin offense back then was designed around the legs, not the arm, the legs of RG3 and his ability to improvise and to run his own read offense. That was the whole thing. And there was nothing more to it. And you take him out of that system, he's really kind of, God, I hate to, he's kind of Tim Tebow-esque.
Mobile quarterbacks in the NFL are not what they are in college. It doesn't work. I mean, it's a nice thing to have, having a quarterback that can move from sideline to sideline and extend plays out of the pocket. But today's NFL defenses are so fast that mobile quarterbacks, the successful ones are few and far in between.
Well, I mean, here's the thing that bothers me. I mean, take a guy like Ben Roethlisberger, who we all don't like for obvious reasons, but there's a guy who's a pocket passer. He escapes the pocket because of brute strength, his ability to break tackles, and when he gets out on the flanks, he can hurt you because he's not looking to run the ball for 7 yards. He's looking to throw it 45 yards down the fucking field. I mean, his head is up.
Well, and then, unlike RG3, Ben Roethlisberger can actually see the field.
Well, that's it. I mean, he's able, because his head is up. Once he's out of the pocket, he's still looking downfield, and he knows the plays, and he understands who's going to be where, and he makes the split decision as to whether he's going to let the ball go or not. RG3, 9 times out of 10, when he's out of the pocket, his head is down looking at a guy who's going to hit him because he's afraid he's going to get hurt again. And he's not looking downfield to make the play, and he's only looking to scramble.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And the only, and I got to say, as far as mobile quarterbacks in the NFL, the only mobile quarterback in the NFL who was mobile and had a great deal of success was Steve Young. But even Steve Young, did you see him scramble a whole lot, particularly late in his career? No,
but his mobility was perfect for a West Coast offense that San Francisco ran. He wasn't so good in Tampa where he just had to run for his life.
Oh, well, Tampa Bay back then. Tampa Bay won, 1 or 2 games a year?
Yeah, they were horrible. I mean, that was John McKay, the coach of the team? Was that his? Yeah.
McKay.
Yeah, his quote.
McKay.
They asked him what he thought of his team's execution, and he said, "I'm all for it."
Right.
Now, that was McKay. Yeah, former USC Trojan head coach. I'm going to say something that's going to irritate a lot of people, but I want to preface this by saying that when Barack Obama became the president of the United States and the birther movement was developed to try to discredit him from taking office, claiming he was Kenyan and not of American, not an American citizen, I railed against that because I rail against anything that reeks of racism. I am trying with all of my ability, General Dog, to fathom how Hue Jackson can come into a press conference, never say a bad word about his defensive coordinator when the team came out on the field and was obviously not even trying to play defense. They looked like a bunch of school children who were upset that they were out in cold weather. They didn't even try. Yet week after week, he protects Ray Horton and never says anything. And then he protects RG3 when RG3 was clearly holding on to the ball more than Cody Kessler, the rookie he called out for doing the very same thing.
You know what I want to know?
What?
How in God's green earth do you get 2 weeks to prepare for a game, and then in the first half you come out and have more penalties than first downs and have a quarterback with a 0 passer rating?
Because the concept of the offense, RG3 doesn't grasp. He's not a pocket passer, and Mike Shanahan told us that. We know that. I mean, this is not anything new. We were the only team in the league that was willing to give RG3 a chance to start for their football team. He didn't receive any other offers. He jumped on the Cleveland thing. He was so done in the eyes of the other franchises in the league because he's not your typical guy that NFL teams build around, which is a large guy with a big arm and who's very comfortable in the pocket. That's not who he is. So I understand how he could come in and reek because he reeks. He's not good. You're forcing him. It would be like taking a defensive boxer and trying to turn him into Mike Tyson style. And you go, God, this guy looks terrible. Well, you're asking him to do something that he's just not good at doing. My concern is not with RG3 because you're not going to see him next year. It doesn't make any difference. What concerns me is the coach and how he critiques certain elements of his team seems to be racially biased to me. And it's bothering me. It's on my soul, and I want to get it off my soul. And I'm going to make a lot of enemies by suggesting this. But if somebody else could explain to me how in the hell you defend Ray Horton's defense this year and never even mention him in any capacity as having responsibility in these post-game press conferences, how you can turn around and declare how poised RG3 was on the field. And when they asked him and pushed him and they said, well, what is it about him that looked poised to you? He said, the way he ran around with the ball. This is what he said. The way he ran around elusively with the ball. This is the same thing he told Cody Kessler, if you don't find somebody open, throw it away. That's what he told him. Didn't tell him to throw a flea flicker out of the end zone into triple coverage, which is unbelievable to me, and he doesn't get called out at all for it. And in fact, he's rewarded by automatically being named the starting quarterback at Buffalo after he showed that he cannot play in cold weather. Now, what am I supposed to think in all of this? That the defensive coordinator is black, that Hue Jackson is black, that RG3 is black, and that Cody Kessler is white?
And
well, wait a minute, I'm not done. And that we found out that it was a package deal that Jimmy Haslam regretfully signed off on, bringing Ray Horton in. But that it was an initiative of Hue Jackson to have his candidate as defensive coordinator, which I believe is based on, again, and I'm not going to tell you that there are enough black head coaches in the NFL. No, the NFL has not been good about this. But, you know, I hate it when it leans the other way, too. That the criteria, I want this guy because he's one of mine. It can't work this way. I always said the reason Bill Belichick is a successful coach is he doesn't support any of his players. He doesn't have any favorites. None. And if you are apparently his favorite, he will sacrifice you to the wolves at the opportune time to fire the rest of the team up to prove that that person's not a favorite of his. And we've seen that over and over again, that he'll just cut people indiscriminately. He'll trade people like J.B. Collins indiscriminately. He'll take guys who have been great players for 10 years for him, and he'll bench them and say, well, you were late for one practice. The guy says, I was caught in traffic in a snowstorm, a blizzard. Bill doesn't care. You know, if you're trying to dig out from the depths that the Cleveland Browns are in, you cannot afford to be married to people on the basis of anything else but merit.
You know, in hindsight, seeing as how Belichick doesn't favor his players, when he cut Bernie Kosar from the Browns,
yep,
I was the only person that didn't have a problem with it. After, maybe not at first, I'll admit, and maybe not at first, but after reviewing the facts and how Kosar tried to undermine the coach, I didn't have a problem with it at that point. Who could? What reasonable person could? You can't put a player before the management of the team.
Well, yeah. God Philcox, the replacement. The problem that I had is that so unceremoniously dumped, and so that God Philcox could be your quarterback, I took exception. I'm one who believes that you don't get rid of dirty water until you have clean to replace it. And Todd Philcox was not clean water to replace Bernie Kosar.
I won't deny the handling of the situation wasn't good. I won't deny that at all. And especially in hindsight, where you had Todd Philcox and then you had who else?
I don't even know.
An injured Testaverde.
Yeah, I mean, it was back then. No, it was Philcox who replaced him, who could only throw one pattern, and that was the one cross the middle on the slant to Metcalf. That's the only pass he knew how to throw. It was sad that guy was allowed to play. All I can say is this. I'm going to, this is automatically archived. Everything I'm saying is going to be archived, and I stand behind this. Not because it is necessarily truth, but it is my perception. And I would love to be convinced otherwise, that there is a reason why the same criteria that he criticized his rookie quarterback, he is not criticizing RG3, who was not only far worse, I mean, he never checked down at all. He never looked at who was open and who wasn't open. He either went back and started running around like a chicken with its head cut off, or he just heaved the ball down the field with no chance of completion. You know, at least Cody Kessler was turning his head on a swivel, looking at who was open and checking down underneath. At least he was showing some understanding of the offense. And I don't think Cody Kessler held on to the ball 1/10 as long as what RG3 was doing.
Oh, absolutely. And Cody Kessler, we all know his arm takes about 15 seconds to get a ball 20 yards down to the hash mark. But at least he could find open receivers and get the ball out to him with some sort of efficiency. That's not what we saw yesterday. So, you know, it's funny that they had two active quarterbacks on the roster. One was RG3 and the other was Cody Kessler. And, of course, Josh McCown's not going to be with the team next season. And so next season it looks like we're going to be going into the season tentatively with RG3 and Cody Kessler. And to be honest, that doesn't fill me with any confidence at all.
They're not going to bring RG3 back. I mean, this is, and I'll tell you, I don't think they're going to bring back Hue Jackson, and I don't think they're going to bring back Ray Horton. I think the whole thing is just going to implode because in the end, favoritism, for whatever reason, we have favorites. You cannot rebuild an organization. And maybe my thought process is faulty here, but there's no doubt that he is expressing vast favoritism toward the veteran quarterback who made a mess of things far worse than the rookie quarterback did. It's a case of favoritism.
Yeah, and the people in my circle are saying, well, you know, the Browns can't fire Hue Jackson after one season again without people not wanting to come to – well, people don't want to come to Cleveland as it is anyway. So what's the difference?
I mean, do you really think that Hue Jackson carries any muster when it comes to attracting free agents? I mean, do you think – that at the very best,
not any more than any other rookie head coach does.
At the very best, what Hue Jackson has is he's going to be diluted next year. If they bring him back, he's not going to have his buddies surrounding him. RG3 is going to be gone. Ray Horton's going to be gone. I guarantee you Horton will be gone because every inside source that I've spoken to has told me that was the question mark in Haslam's head, that he really wasn't sold on bringing a guy back who wasn't so good the first time around. And now the reason is, and, you know, he has all the reasons in the world to shit can him. So what you're going to see is a diluted Hue Jackson. And Hue Jackson is a person who may not accept that. I could see him resigning the second that they say, we're not bringing Horton back, we're not bringing RG3 back, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. And he's going to say, well, then I'm not the head coach anymore because I don't have that kind of say that I need to have. I would not be surprised one iota. So, you know, I'm lost in all of this. I'm really lost in all of it because the product we're putting out on the field in front of an empty stadium, I mean, I don't know if you saw the StubHub thing. Did you realize that 15 minutes before the game, a ticket to that game, you could have walked in for $6? $6?
Yes, I even read $1 at one point.
I mean, this is the embarrassment. I mean, the league can't continue to allow this to happen. I mean, I'm amazed because to me, I guess the NFL is like a cooperative. Everything about it is shared, so it's a cooperative. I remember Jerry Jones having the big problem with merchandising, and when the Cowboys were doing so much merchandising, and he wanted, you know, not to share with the others. He wanted his own. But the NFL is a cooperative because all the teams, it's like one big pool, and that's the way it works. And it's like an octopus with a bunch of tentacles, and all these franchises are tentacles of the NFL. And if you have a weak series of franchises or self-destructive franchises, I mean, right now, if I were the Rams fans, I mean, extending, Jeff Fisher is insane. It's insane. You know, they've lost
in the span of 6 weeks. They extended Jeff Fisher for 2 years, and then they fire him. I mean, you say, I mean, the Browns are bad, okay, but doing that all in the short time span like the Rams do, I mean, that's worse. That's way worse.
Well, I mean, it's a sign that teams are not
being run right.
That's right.
They're not being run right. It's from within. And, not to lay the entire problem at the hands of Browns coaches. Since 2010, the Browns have drafted 10 players in the first round. Only 4 are still with the team, and 3 are out of the NFL.
Those dishes.
No, I'm reading in the chat room with people, Newman saying Hue will probably get fired around next Halloween when the Browns break the all-time record for consecutive losses. My feeling is he's going to resign out of pride. He's not going to he's going to take the resignation route because they're going to take all of his friends away from him. And again, you need to be a really strong individual to go through what the Browns organization is going through and to be able to dig out from this mess. It requires a real strong stomach. And the Ray Horton thing has been a failure. And I mean, I can't, how do you, in weather conditions that brutal, allow a team in like 7 plays to go down the field and score? How do you allow that to happen? How does a team on a 15-yard kick return where the runner, Ricardo Lewis, stops every time he catches the ball, he runs 10 yards and fucking stops, all right? How in the hell could you block a man in the back in the 13-yard return? How in the hell does this happen every single game that when we can't return a kick, that we're blocking somebody in the back at the same time? When does this lining up offsides, when does this shit stop?
Well,
I mean,
the special teams coach has been retained by how many regimes now? 3?
Yep.
And maybe that's the problem, complacency. Hey, I must be doing something right. I keep getting retained, so why change? Why analyze what's going wrong? I'm going to be retained anyway, right?
I can't imagine that there isn't a guy on the practice squad who would be willing to run into fucking traffic, all right, on Interstate 90, right in Cleveland, that would be fearless to return kicks. And instead we have Ricardo Lewis, who's just clearly afraid to hit a hole. He's afraid to run at top speed. He's a pussy. I'm sorry. He shouldn't be on special teams. And you can't tell me that
returning punts. Who are we kidding? Joe Hayden returning punts?
I mean, it's crazy. You're at a point where it's like, how? So he's going to get smacked, and you're going to end his career that way. There has to be somebody on the goddamn practice squad who's fearless, who can return a kick better than these people. There has to be. And the fact that it's not being done is just unbelievable to me. The whole organization is just like the Rams organization. Retaining Fisher, then firing Fisher. They don't know what they're doing. There's obviously a disagreement within the organization as to who's going to do what. And the Browns have the same situation. There is not this feeling of being a contiguous group of people in the front office, but we're a quilt, a patchwork of people. A guy who is a lawyer, a guy who is a baseball guy, a guy.
The same problem that the Browns organization has had since 1999. There's no singular guy in office who's number one, the absolute number one guy, where the buck stops here and actually knows what he's doing.
Yeah. Now, Michelle is joining us now. I'm glad to see you got online. What happened to your internet?
I don't know. Nothing was working. Even my phone wouldn't work. It had like no signal, but I restarted the router and it seems to be working now. So
all right, good. And General Dog is with us because he's moved the way I'm moved into this. Now, he didn't back me on what my suggestion is. I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to irritate more people. But Michelle, my feeling is after Hue Jackson came out and said that RG3 looked poised in that football game and immediately named him the starter for next week at Buffalo, another cold weather destination, when the guy proved he couldn't throw a football in the wind or the cold to save his soul, and his refusal to even mention Ray Horton in the defense as part of the problem, coming out in that game, giving up 20 points before everybody blinked, that this is racially motivated. that he is protecting African-American employees and he is bad-mouthing Cody Kessler for things that RG3 clearly did worse than Cody Kessler. And the reason I feel this way is because when Kessler was having responsible games, not great games, but he was throwing for 220 yards, 230 yards, was completing 66% of his passes, wasn't throwing touchdowns, wasn't really that good in the red zone when he got there, but was making decisions, not throwing interceptions and checking down. All Hue Jackson would say about the kid was, well, he's holding on to the ball too long. Well, what the fuck was RG3 doing yesterday, man? I mean, he's running around like a Keystone Cop. You know, I think I was reading, it was like cue the yakety sax music soundtrack because he looked discombobulated. And
Sure
this is
poised.
Poised, right, poised. I mean, it's like we can't criticize people of our own race. Is that what this is? Or we're treating people differently because one's a veteran and one's a rookie? I mean, we don't have time for this. Am I completely off base here, Michelle? Help me.
I never would have made the connection that it's race related, but I also don't really think that way. You know as well as I do. Like I'm kind of naive when it comes to things like that because I just don't think that way. But I do see it as a veteran rookie thing. I think he's crapping on Cody Kessler. I don't know if he's trying to prove a point or if he's trying to assert himself in a position that he knows he's not safe in, but he's definitely dumping on Cody Kessler for no reason. But if he was out to protect RG3, he wouldn't put him out there at all. I'm surprised he lasted the entire game. I'm surprised he didn't get killed.
But here's the other thing, and it's the thing that I know because I've talked to people within the organization. Jimmy Haslam was presented with Hue Jackson's original contract with the stipulation that Ray Horton had to be the defensive coordinator. This I know. This isn't something I'm guessing. This is something I know. And that Jimmy Haslam regrets having signed that deal because he needed a head coach and he felt that Hue Jackson was a guy who was had an effervescent personality, could talk, players into running through walls for him. And so he kind of bit down on the stick and went ahead with the Ray Horton thing. And people inside the organization say that he was torn about bringing Ray Horton back when he was unsuccessful in his first tenure as defensive coordinator in Cleveland, and that he was part of the Hue Jackson package.
That makes sense because you'd have to be crazy to otherwise bring him back, or you absolutely didn't pay attention to anything that happened with this team while he was here the first time. That's when we started talking about the pussified defense because he was talking about he wouldn't blitz big name quarterbacks and he didn't want the defense to go too hard on certain offenses. And it didn't work. It didn't work the first time around. You'd have to be completely stupid or not watch anything that goes on in your organization to bring him back. So that would make sense to me that there's a deep catch that caught him back in here. Do you know the terms of their contracts, like how long he's locked in for? Is it just as long as Hue Jackson is here? Or they both have like 1-year contracts. What are they looking at? Do you know?
Well, I mean, I don't know what we've learned.
Hopefully they'll both be gone before the end of the year. I mean, you
have to pay them. Well, I mean, you know how many head coaches we were paying at one time. At one point, it was like 3 different guys being paid at the same time. I mean, you're on the hook financially for the money you guaranteed Hue Jackson for however many years. It doesn't mean he has to work here. It just means it's going to come out of your pocket. But honestly, I think that Jimmy Haslam is looking at this and saying, I got roped into bringing back somebody that I knew at the time I shouldn't have done, and because I wanted the head coach, now the head coach has turned out to be a boho. I know that Hue Jackson is protecting Ray Horton. I know that. Why did he want Ray Horton as his defensive coordinator? I don't know what the background between these two men is, but again, there is one visual aspect that I keep falling back on, and it's bothering me because I don't like to think this way. I'm trying to figure out how in the hell as a fan I'm watching this every single week. How General Dog is watching this every single week. How the stands get emptier and emptier week after week. And how the defense comes out and puts us in a hole before the fucking game even gets out of the half of the first quarter. We're down by 2 touchdowns in every fucking game because the defense doesn't come out to play. How is it possible that in every press conference that's never brought up? How is it possible that the press doesn't say to him, don't you think you should motivate your defensive coordinator to motivate your players a little bit harder? Nothing.
You're right. Those reporters are definitely always throwing cupcakes at Hue. And I
mean, General Dog, you got your question answered by Mary Kay Cabot. You feel good about it?
No.
What was the
not
question?
at all.
She's got me blocked. What was the question?
Oh, no,
the tweet I made was the tweet. I mean, Mary Kay Cabot tweeted that Hue Jackson had stated that RG3 looked poised and looked like he belonged, and he was going to start against Buffalo. And then I tweeted, I retweeted that, and I said, "Well, oh my God, would you just make this thing stop?" Come on, let's face it. RG3 is not an NFL quarterback. He is not an NFL quarterback. He has not been one, and he is not going to be one. So that was the root of it.
And Barry Kay said, oh, yeah, he not only did he look poised like he belonged, but that his teammates let him down. And she gave him the biggest company answer that you've ever heard in your life. It was just the biggest sack of horseshit I've ever heard in my life.
Teammates let him down?
Oh, yeah, that he would have done much better because of the drop passes. There were 3 drop passes. Didn't even mention all the other horrible shit that this guy did.
How about fucking flea flicker from the 2? Jesus Christ.
Well, and it was intercepted. And nearly.
Of course it was intercepted.
Half of his passes were in the ozone layer. I mean, he was overthrowing everything. It was sailing. It was inaccurate. I mean, nobody could watch that game and actually feel that way unless they were being paid to say what they were saying.
Yeah, and it's you couldn't. I mean, that flea flicker at the 2-yard line. Who does that? It's not all on RG3. It's a play calling. Who does that? Nobody I know would do that.
Somebody who's desperate. I'm telling you.
I would never in a million years call that play at the 2-yard line and throw the ball out of your own end zone on a flea flicker. Who does that?
I've got a question for you since we're talking about race thing. Why is Terrell Pryor all of a sudden the whipping boy for the entire team? Why is he the one that's getting shit on and thrown?
Because he's the one who's willing to say bullshit about what's going on. The fuckers in the offensive line aren't blocking, getting our quarterbacks killed. And God damn it, the RG3's not even looking at me. He can't see the fucking field. And it's like, he doesn't have a problem criticizing his own kind. He got no fucking problem. He's seeing the same thing General Dog and I are seeing. And
he's getting shit from defenders. I mean, these 2 weeks in a row, these guys are shitting on him personally.
Yep, nobody stands up for him.
Nobody stands up for him, exactly. He's the only guy with a little bit of passion on this team. And when not only does he get thrown under the bus by the team and by the organization and by the media for even opening his mouth and daring to criticize his employer, he's getting it from people in the league, and they're not being fun. This isn't like cutesy little shit talk. This is personal.
He is not.
They're doing it absolutely personally.
Not criticizing Jimmy Haslam. He's indirectly criticizing Hue Jackson. And the fact of the matter is, when they can't line people up at the line of scrimmage because RG3 doesn't have a grasp of the offense, when he goes back to throw and doesn't even look at our best receiver the entire fucking game, I mean, how is he supposed to feel? He's out there and then he has to sit there and get the Adam Pac-Man Jones in the garbage can shit after the game.
Awful. And then they question why he doesn't want to talk to the media after the game. Why the fuck should he? Why should he go out there and defend himself again against talk like that?
Just to be disrespected this way, and then to be disrespected when your coach says, I'm going to put a stop to Terrell Pryor's antics. And it's like, I want somebody to put a stop to Hue Jackson's flea flickers and his antics.
Yes.
It's panic-stricken bullshit is what it is. The reason we're on the 2-yard line, why don't you ask Chris Tabor why we're on the fucking 2-yard line? Because we catch a punt on the 20 and somebody shoves a guy in the back for no fucking reason on a goddamn fair catch, and we get put back on the 5-yard line. We're always in the shadow of our own goalpost. Always. I mean, I've never seen a team start with worse field position week after week because of their own self-inflicted wounds. But we don't hear about Chris Tabor. We don't hear about Ray Horton. We hear about Terrell Pryor, who sees the same things we do and is fucking sick of it. He ain't going to re-sign in Cleveland. Come on, folks. You wouldn't either.
And one thing that I recall from the Browns firing the last two coaches, when reporters asked what was the defining reason, the theme that they came out with was a lack of progress during the season. Well, are we progressing during this season? No, we're regressing for sure. For sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm looking in here. So Amsterdam says Tawana Brawley will be the next coach. Look, I mean, if they can get her out of the plastic bag, perhaps. I have to comment to these things. Of course, now Wiley's agreeing with me. Black people, as a rule, do not criticize their own. That is not true. Terrell Pryor's having no trouble doing it. It's just not getting him anywhere. I just don't like when people have obvious favorites, and I don't like when people who are allegedly journalists who are feeding us a company line, look, we have eyes. We can see how bad this is. The fans we're down to $6 ticket time and empty stadiums. And, again, from an economic perspective, this isn't going to work. And it isn't just because you're having an 0-13 season. It's because a multitude of 17 seasons of this same kind of hopelessness. And, you're not going to get a good head coach in here. You're not going to get somebody who at this point, I mean, this is a career ender for people. I mean, for Hue Jackson, he's going to be an offensive coordinator for the rest of his life. He's never going to be a head coach again. If he doesn't turn this damn thing around, he's never going to be a head coach again. Now, and I'm not saying that he deserves to be or doesn't deserve to be somewhere else. I'm talking facts. You look at all these coaches that Cleveland has shit-canned, who they took because they were the only ones willing to accept the job.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you don't see Pettin doing anything. You don't see, on a head coaching level, none of these people.
And Hue Jackson was a coach that was apparently on other teams' radars for the first time. I mean, we had hired Chudzinski. We hired Shermer. We hired Mike Pettin. None of those guys were on anybody's radar. And when they were hired by the Browns, people were like, who's these guys again? And then, Hue Jackson was apparently on other teams' radars. They were wanting to interview him, and then the Browns hired him. Well, lucky for us.
Well, you got to hire somebody. Somebody's got to want to take the chance.
You're going to end up with somebody like Jeff Fisher because he's got the experience and he's already in the dumps. He can't do any worse than LA. Oh yeah, he can. Cleveland. You're going to bring someone like him in, and you're going to have this promise of turnaround that you have every time we go through the turnstiles of the front office when your head coach, your coordinators, and everybody gets switched out again. And it's going to be a disaster for a long, long time. There's no chance of this improving anytime soon.
Hey, let me say one thing about Jeff Fisher before
his bag of tricks is empty.
Yeah, well, but I can say this. Even he had the sense to know that Jared Goff was put on third string for a reason in the beginning of the season, that Jared Goff isn't capable of playing at the NFL level. He was aware of that. And that somebody in the organization told him, you got to play Jared Goff. Yeah. And now when he plays Jared Goff and he gets blown out of every fucking game because the guy is just a bag full of mistakes, they shit can the coach. It is a no-win situation. And I look at Hue Jackson. Look, it's not that I have a personal hatred of this guy. He got the shaft after an 8-8 season in Oakland, and it's taken this many years to get Oakland back on track. He got caught in a power struggle there and lost. So I understand that he waited a long time to become a head coach again, and I'm just pointing out that his failure in Cleveland is going to guarantee that he's never a head coach again. He's going to become the Norv Turner. He's going to become the offensive coordinator guy. He's going to be a guy who never becomes a head coach again, because this is the absolute ground zero for disasters as far as coaching is concerned, careers. And it's too bad.
Norv Turner got 3 head coaching jobs, and Hue isn't even going to get that.
He doesn't deserve it. He's shown that he's not a leader. He's not strong. He's not firm about anything. I told you those tears were just a joke because the guy is a friggin' pussy. Look at Luke Fickell. he spent his whole career at Ohio State, doing what he's doing. And finally, under the last few years under Urban Meyer, he's ready to branch out and be a head coach. And I'm really happy for him because he's probably learned a lot. That one season, he was just thrown into the position, had no idea what he was doing, and he still didn't do too bad. Now with the tutelage and now that with the probably the greatest coach in college football right now, teaching him, he's landed himself a head coaching position. You can't even find somebody who's going to want to make that transition to Cleveland. You can't even tell me that in 3 years, Hue's going to have what it takes to be a leader of this team because he's just not that kind of personality. He can barely run an offense.
Young coaches in general who are looking to start their careers, the old wisdom was you got to get into the game. So you got to get into the churn, into the mix, and then you make your connections, and then eventually you'll, even if you fail. But it's not like that anymore because you go to a lousy football team that are career lousy football teams, and you can't turn them around. And like we've said, the Chudzinskis and the Pettins, these people never get another chance. I mean, because it's Cleveland and it's a disaster. And Hue Jackson, based on crying in press conferences, this ridiculous favoritism, erratic play calling, he's not going to be a head coach again.
This guy has become completely unglued. You can tell.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's true. He looks like a guy who the 0-13 is weighing so heavily on his soul. And look, we talked about Urban Meyer leaving Florida because he had this, the heavy chest syndrome. He's afraid he's going to have a fucking heart attack if he stayed, in Gainesville. He was going to fucking die. Right. He was having anxiety attacks, and so he got away from there. Hue Jackson is not going to remember his time in Cleveland fondly because he's not sleeping at night. He doesn't look like somebody who has any answers, and he looks like the problem is way bigger than he is. And look, it's a tough job to take. I took jobs that I look back at my life and I go, God almighty, there are some things that you can't turn around. There are some things that you cannot do. And you can be really good at what you do and you still can't fix some problems because they're just so entrenched and so rooted. I'm not going to say the same system that kept Hue Jackson out of a head coaching job because he was black. And that is a fact too, that he had to remain an offensive coordinator all these years after the one season he got in Oakland. And now part of his demands of Jimmy Haslam was to hire an African-American defensive coordinator.
To be clear, he was only offensive coordinator in Cincinnati for 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, my feeling about this is it's a warped society that we live in. The values are wrong. And, you want to grab something. And I always thought that Hue Jackson came off as kind of cavalier to me. Kind of like, I got the job. I'm in town now. And I'm going to be able to talk our way out of this shit. And I don't think his ego or whatever the hell it is, he had no idea how deep the water was. Mm-hmm. And I think now, and you see it like General Dog said, it's etched in his face. He realizes now for the first time in his life that you can't talk your way out of it, that this problem is bigger than he is, and he doesn't have an answer. And his answer is flea flickers from the 2-yard line, throwing the ball from your own end zone in a triple coverage. That's his play call answer. It's like, we're never going to move the ball 98 yards, so fuck it. We're just going to heave it up in the air.
Sad as it is, that's the one play I'm going to remember from that game, is that flea flicker out of your own end zone that gets intercepted and becomes nearly a pick six.
Yeah, and the other thing I remember is they run their end around to get big yardage. We run ours and go backwards. I mean, I look at this as, all these little trick, formations that he tries to run, and then he runs all of his offensive linemen out wide, then runs them back in. It's all like mental masturbation because it doesn't wind up with positive yardage. How can Isaiah Crowell?
Yeah, and another problem with those trick plays is it doesn't allow the offense to get into any kind of a rhythm. When you're yanking your starting quarterback and putting in the third string, mobile guy, what's his name, Kevin Hogan, and you're busting the offense's rhythm.
Yeah, the other thing I can't figure out is how Isaiah Crowell had 10 carries and 113 yards and to get used more. I mean, cold weather, snowstorm, high winds, quarterback who hasn't played but twice in 2 years, and you abandon the run. And the reason is because your defensive coordinator put you in a 20-0 hole early in the game. But the truth of the matter is that when they ran the football, they actually got back in the football game. And Hue Jackson was the first one to say in the beginning of the year, we have to run the football first before we can do anything that we want to do with my offensive scheme. He's never even made an attempt to run the football this year. We get snuffed on like 3 or 4 plays, and it's gone. Then we end up throwing 50 times. I mean, he's panic-stricken. There's no – I mean, how would it be worse to 3,000 people in the stands if he ran the ball more than passed the ball and still lost and didn't score much? I don't get – how would it be different?
I have, honestly, and I've been thinking about this and doing some research, I have never seen a head coach who was inexperienced at being a head coach and called offensive or defensive plays at the same time with any success.
It's almost like watching a Pop Warner team out there, trying to do silly little plays and get all cute to, it's like they're the short little tiny kids going up against two grades higher and guys who are bigger, and they're trying to outsmart them with little tricks. That's what it's like watching every single week.
Well,
and
the flubbed extra point. The flubbed extra point was the most embarrassing thing that I've ever witnessed in all of my years of watching. And I've watched some incredible things. I've watched some of the worst Cleveland Cavalier basketball teams. You just shake your head and go, wow, they're just awful. And lived through that whole Ted Stepien thing. I was right there in Municipal Stadium during the Rick Manning years when it was just so fucking hopeless. At the end of Vernon Stouffer's run on the team and the empty stadium where I was a 17-year-old disc jockey. I had tickets, a 17-year-old kid. I had tickets at will call, and I bring a date up to the stadium and walk right to the box seats. They just let me sit in the box seats. 17-year-old kid. Because nobody wanted to watch the Indians play. But that play, to me, they fuck up an extra point because the snap is there, but the guy doesn't hold the ball. He kicks it on the ground. Most teams would just say, okay, that's that. The Browns try to turn it into a UCal play, figuring maybe if we can get a marching band on the field, we can get, some points out of this, because we're not going to get points any other way because RG3 is the quarterback and he can't see the field. And instead they run this whole – Harry high school bullshit lateral thing. And I'm just sitting there and it's like, I'm watching the fucking Benny Hill show. I mean, this is not professional football.
Even the announcers were laughing at us the entire game from that moment and my husband was like, oh, they're just trying to get 2. I'm like, they look like idiots. They look so fucking stupid. It's embarrassing to even be associated with that.
I was like, I took a walk at halftime. I just said, take a walk. I don't really need to watch this anymore. And I recorded it. I don't believe me. Just believe the fans. The most rabid fan base in the history of professional football is gone. It's suffocated and dead.
One of my best girlfriends has been a season ticket holder for years. And her section, they make it a point to never sell their tickets to anybody else so that, outsiders can't come in and take it over. I think she's in the dog pound. And it's just like, even she's like, oh, I got to go to the muni lot. I got to go to the game later. Like it's a chore now to even watch these guys.
I agree. I mean, I don't look forward to Sunday. I mean, actually, I look forward to Sunday because I can golf with my wife on Sunday. That's really seriously. There's no other reason. I was happy as a clam on the bye week. You remember how we used to feel on the bye week? Oh, fuck, there's not a Browns game. What am I going to do on Sunday? Now it's like I'm free at last. I don't have to watch the fucking Browns. I'm going to go golfing or I'm going to go do something else. I mean, you look at the online activity as far as, the OBR.com, some good people over there that I've known for years. Man, The attendance there is dropped to like nil. There used to be, they run a chat room. They'd have hundreds of people in the chat room. Now they got like 32 people in the chat room. I mean,
nobody wants to talk about it. They don't even want to think about it because it's just so exhausting.
It's really a sad thing. And these were the fans who did everything they could within their power to bring this football team back to Cleveland. Yeah. And this is what they got out of it. And it's not a fair thing. And we deserve better as fans. I mean, there's no excuse for not being a professional team. There's always an excuse for not being particularly good. Because if you're, take a look at Tony's Minnesota Timberwolves. Tony will sit there and talk about how he's got these 3 great young players. They do everything but win. They're 6-18. 6-18. Jeez. With these 3 great young players, these future stars of the NBA. They got a head coach who can't get them to play defense, and they're not on the same page. They got guys who never have good games 2 games in a row. And they find a way to lose every fucking way possible, including after the Warriors got blown out by Memphis, who, by the way, we have to play coming up Tuesday and Wednesday on a back-to-back, and Memphis is playing some tremendous basketball right now. They blew out the Warriors by 20-odd points, but they were ahead by 30 for the majority of the game. The Warriors were behind the Timberwolves going into the fourth quarter and had a 26-4 scoring spurt in the fourth quarter and just buried them in Minnesota. You see, but there's always a reason teams are bad. But even the Minnesota Timberwolves, as Tony points out, have Andrew Wiggins, have Karl Anthony Towns, and they've got Levine and Zach Levine, and they got something that makes them a professional team. The results may not be good, but they got some professional players. The Browns aren't even a professional football team. They're a sandlot football team. It's really embarrassing. It reminds me of the year when we had the Scabs. That's what it reminds me of.
Oh, gosh.
The he hate me shit.
The XFL.
Yeah, I mean, it's like bozo time, and I don't know. I mean, that's the thing about not wanting to watch it, is that we don't have a chance to win. And I hate to say this, but I think the University of Alabama gives the Browns a real tough game and might win. The Browns right now are such whipped puppies emotionally. I really doubt that whether they could beat anybody right now. And that's
Alabama.
I don't think they could beat a high school team.
Alabama is good for a reason. It's all about teamwork, team chemistry, and the things that make a successful team. The Browns have none of that. They
also have Nick Saban. Nick Saban spent years under Belichick in Cleveland and obviously learned how to run a team and how to not run a team by being here. So, you've got somebody who's got an actual football mind, and everybody that they've brought in to coach this team doesn't have any leadership qualities and doesn't have the kind of sense about football to be able to do it.
Yeah,
look at what's his face asking his daddy about everything. Like, are you serious? Like, if you have to second guess everything you do and ask your dad, you're not cut out for the position.
Yeah, I'm looking at all these. Wrap this up, Moo. Tucker Carlson comes on at 7. He wants to watch his conservative talk show host. All right, I get you. I just, and I agree with what's being said in the chat room. The only successful coach would be an accidental one at this point, because there is nobody who wants to put their reputation on the line by coming to Cleveland.
Nobody reputable is going to want to come here. I mean, nobody reputable want to come here. And regardless of how we handle Hue Jackson, whether we fire him this year or we fire him next year, it doesn't matter. Nobody wants to come here. Nobody's going to want to come here. Nothing is going to change. And
unless the league steps in.
If whoever does turn this team around, it's going to be someone out of the blue we get lucky on.
What can they do?
What could the league do to turn this around? I mean, they would have to give the supplemental picks. They have to give the Browns supplemental picks to get them on their feet. This would have to be just like they did with the Cavaliers when Stepien was, removed from that whole thing. And as part of the enticement for Gordon Gund is like, oh, what am I supposed to do? You got rid of the only good players we had, and now I've got fucking Luke Whitty. It's like, what am I supposed to do with this? So they said, look, we're not just asking you, little blind man, to come into Cleveland with a shit roster. We're going to give you these picks. We're going to create these supplemental draft picks for you, and we're going to allow this to build a foundation. And that's
and
what
goes back on what I said about, we've drafted 10 players in the first round since 2010, and only 4 are still with the team. 3 of them are out of the NFL entirely.
Yeah, I think of all the. I remember Gerard gun-toting Warren. I mean, I just remember all these names that come flying into my head of guys that we drafted high, and they not even in the league, and they never amounted to anything. And what's even funnier is for all the talk about Bill Belichick, nobody's talking about Barkevius Mingo because he can't tackle anybody. He got no discernible skill and shouldn't even have been in the NFL in the first place, and he won't be for very long. But you're right, General Dog. Unless you have, and part of what the league does, it's turnkey. For a guy like Gordon Gund, who didn't know anything about owning a basketball team, the league came to him and said, we know that you have the finances to do this. We know you're an honorable man. Here's what we did. We've got Wayne Embry, all right? And he is a certified general manager who knows basketball inside and out. And, we're going to give you him as your general manager. So you'll start a nice brain trust, and we're going to give you these picks. And Wayne Embry will tell you who to pick. And so you get Mark Price, and you get Ronnie Harper, and you get Brad Doherty, and you get John Hot Rod Williams. And you get all these people in one fucking year. All right? The league basically said, okay, it's Christmas in Cleveland because they had to live through Ted Stepien. And that's what the NFL is going to have to do. It's like, you've suffered enough, Browns fans. 17 years of this crap, and the league fucked up. The league fucked up bad when they rushed us. And that whole Carmen policy thing, that whole ownership group only finding out months before the season began and not having a chance to build an organization, bringing in Dwight Clark, who didn't have a freaking idea of what he was supposed to do. Carmen policy, who wanted to be in California sipping wine, didn't want to be in Cleveland. The whole thing from the get-go was put together on such short notice, and then not giving that franchise picks.
We had 18 months from the time Al Werner was selected as the Browns owner to where we had to start playing games. 18 months. The Houston Texans got nearly 3 years to prepare.
And they got picks. We didn't get picks. All we got was waiver wire shit. We got, teams had to make available 3 or 4 men off their roster. So that's how we end up with Jim Pine at center. We were taking every bit off the scrap heap to play for our team in 1999 because we were not given supplemental picks that future expansion teams, including Houston, received a mere couple of years later. The Browns from the get-go were bastardized, and then the hole kept getting dug deeper and deeper and deeper. The league needs to step in and do something, and I don't think they will. But, you have another 0 season, which is a real possibility because we don't have any talent. The whole thing, this is the ultimate scorched earth policy, folks. Taylor Gabriel caught another bomb for a touchdown, for the Falcons. We just give away what little we had. We give away for nothing. We get nothing for it. We just cut it and get it off. And I don't know. It's 4 after 7. We're done. And General Dog, thank you. Thank you for jumping in. And I'm glad that you were moved to do this because it's hard to watch.
Yeah, absolutely, Moo. I hope to do it again soon.
Thank you. And you have a good night. And Michelle, thanks for popping in, okay?
Yeah, sorry it took so long. I'll see you Wednesday.
Wednesday, I'll be here.
Sounds good.
Take it easy, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye. That's it for this edition of Moohead Radio. Back again on Wednesday. We'll be talking about the Cavaliers, who are going to have a home and away with Memphis. Memphis is the hottest team in the league right now. And you know, that's Tisdale doing a number over there in Memphis with a lot of the same players they've had in the past, but they're just rolling right now. And the Cavaliers have been sensational as well. LeBron, once again, the player of the week. How many of those has he racked up, along with players of the month as well as MVPs? LeBron is duck soup. Amazing basketball player. We'll be talking Cavaliers on Wednesday, and we'll see what happens with the Browns as we get later in the week. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Hope I didn't offend anybody today, but if you want to leave comments on the YouTube channel and tell me why you believe that Hue Jackson is not criticizing Ray Horton for the work that's being done on the defense, and why he's not criticizing RG3 for the same sins that he criticized Cody Kessler for. If you have some suggestions, I'm more than happy to listen to them, because I want to be wrong about this, but I don't think I am. Thanks a lot for tuning in. See you Wednesday. Hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Good night.